Got a submission here from Mr. Murder19.75. Mr. Murder's submission is a hover test. So there's not a lot to see here, honestly. And normally I don't do hover test reviews because there's not a lot to see. But Mr. Murder went to the effort of putting in some specific observations, which I appreciate. And so I thought I could do, I could at least respond to them. So thank you for that. Mr. Murder is flying on 3S, so keep that in mind as we look at the P and D gains and so forth. These are 3S, not 4S. Looking at the PIDs here, P is at 8.4, which that was what made me check whether you were on 3S or 4S, because that's a bit high for 4S, most 4S setups, but on 3S, yeah, that could be pretty normal. 8.4, 7.5 on roll. D is on at 10 and 8 and 8. A little hard for me to judge that one because you are on Betaflight 220, and it does look to me, well, when we get to your traces, it does look to me like you're running at 2 kilohertz. The nature of the PID traces looks like 2 kilohertz to me, so I'm going to guess that's what's going on here. The eye on all three axes is smooth as buddies say. It has you wondering if it's because it's basically doing nothing. Well, if you're in a hover, eye probably is doing nothing. Because if you're in a relatively stable hover, the eye term on all three axes will approach its baseline value where it is counteracting whatever persistent bias is present due to CG and aerodynamic effects and so on and so on and so on. And then it'll just sit there. And until the copter changes attitude, until it pitches or rolls, until you throttle up or throttle down, or the wind blows on it, which is not going to happen on an inside hover test, the eye terms will just sit there. So you cannot judge the eye terms until you see more dynamic flight conditions. You say the gyro trace looks pretty good. Doesn't look like there's a lot of noise on there. I have to disagree. Now, there was a time, 6 months ago or a year ago, when these gyro traces would have looked pretty good. There's a moving target here, and everything is different every time Boris releases a new version of his software. But these feel like they look pretty noisy to me, only because the filtering on Betaflight is normally so good that I'm surprised to see what's going on here. Now, you are on 3S, which means that your props are spinning at slightly slower than 4S, which means your noise is going to be slightly lower frequency and slightly less filtered, because the cutoff frequency of the filter hasn't changed. So that's playing into it some. And I don't think that the noise level that you've got here is indicative of any problems. This doesn't make me go, oh, holy cow, that's terrible. But it does make, I wouldn't say it's great. And I do see that you've got your gyro LPF off. That's your hardware filter is off, probably because you're trying to do 2 kilohertz mode. And your gyro soft LPF is on, your D term cut hertz and your P term cut hertz are at 0. There's nothing wrong with any of that. And if indeed you want to run 2 kilohertz, that's pretty much how it's got to be. But it is worth noting that you do have a little more noise on here than I would normally expect to see, especially on the pitch axis. Pitch axis is a little surprising, because pitch axis is usually the least noisy of all three because of the way the weight is distributed. It's not that bad. It's not that bad when I look at it by itself. Oh, I see. Roll is a little noisier. That's normal, again, because of the way the weight is usually distributed. You're usually more damped on the pitch axis. Yeah, so none of this is terrible, but I also wouldn't say it's great. Fair enough? Fair enough. We can take a look at other things, but given that this is a hover test, I don't think we're going to see much here. Let's have a look and see what we can come up with. Now, first of all, we've got this high-frequency junk that comes in at 2 kilohertz, and I just honestly don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with this, honestly. Like, I can't tell if this is normal or if this is a problem. There's so much activity, so much high-frequency noise superimposed on the P trace. Like, it doesn't, I don't know. Obviously, I think if you were having crazy oscillations, you would have said, And you're saying it feels loose and disconnected, which suggests low P gains. But I'm sorry to say, I just have no idea what to make of this. It's got so much high frequency stuff in it, I can't even really tell what it's doing. I don't know. What's your denominator, out of curiosity? Yeah, 1-3 denominator. So it's possible that some of what we're seeing here is aliasing noise from the fact that you're only logging 1 out of every 3 traces or samples. I don't know, but I really can't even start to come with a conclusion. There's so much high frequency noise in here. By high frequency noise, I mean the fact that there's all these really tiny jiggles back and forth. And if you look at it, you can see that underneath those high frequency wiggles and jiggles, that there's a lower frequency signal that we might begin to interpret, but I can't even begin to pick it out. So frankly, if I were going to try to interpret this, I would actually really kind of want a low pass filter in the black box viewer, but I don't think that's going to happen. So honestly, I don't think there's really anything in here that can let me tell you anything helpful. So I'm sorry to say. Similar thing in the pitch. Tons of, and who knows how much of that gyro noise that we saw is this aliasing noise, if that's what it is. I don't know. If you can log at, you can't log at 1-to-1 if you're at 2 kilohertz. I got to tell you, here's my recommendation, and you're not going to like it, but if you are not an experienced tuner, go back to 1 kilohertz. So set gyro LPF to 188 hertz. I believe the syntax is 188 hertz. That will force you back to 1 kilohertz. Disable your accelerometer. Oh, good. You've already done that. Good for you. Leave that disabled, and you should be able to log at 1-to-1 logging at a 250 kilobaud UART to an open log device. That will make your black box traces much simpler to interpret, I hope, and will also make your tuning a lot easier. That's what I think. I think that 2 kilohertz mode is not stable is not the word I'm looking for. It's not familiar enough yet that we know how to tune it unless you already are really experienced. And frankly, if you're coming from a relatively noobish perspective, you may not really need the performance benefits of between 1 kilohertz is already amazingly good. Okay, it's amazingly good. So, do you need like amazing plus 10%? Maybe just not go for 2 kilohertz yet, and set it at 1 kilohertz, and hopefully your black box logs will make a little more sense, and it'll be easier to tune. So I would say that if you want to do another submission, it's not your fault, but just nothing I can really make of this. So if you're gonna, I can't make anything of this. I'm sorry. So if you're gonna do another submission, it needs to be, I would say, set gyro LPF to 188. That'll force you to 1 kilohertz. And that should allow you to do 1-to-1 black box logging using 250 kilobaud to an open log device. And that's what I would suggest you submit. Also, the next thing you submit, don't just let it, a hover is just not going to tell us anything, right? It's just going to be flat lines. There's nothing to see. So do some flying around, do some sharp turns, do some flips and rolls if you can do flips and rolls, but at least get moving fast, do some sharp turns around some trees or something, or just in an open field. Just get flying fast and then turn around and fly fast the other direction, punch out, go high, drop the throttle, fall down. Even a beginner can punch the throttle and go high and then cut the throttle and fall down. Those kinds of things that I've talked about before, so we really have something to look at. All right. Well, I'm sorry that probably wasn't very helpful, but anyway, happy flying.